morning, good morning, good morning. And thank you for joining me on another episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. I am your host, Sharifa Hardy, and I have an amazing show for you today. I'm going to introduce you to some great guests. They have incredible stories, very diverse, but there's a theme amongst them, and that is to bring you positive information. So I'm going to ask you to do what I always ask you to do, and that is to go invite someone to share the show and invite someone to watch the show. Be an evangelist, be an activist, go out into your community and actively let people know that the Roundtable Talk Show is on, because all this information, all these notes, everything we're sharing, you don't want them to miss it. So while you're doing your job, I'll do my job and introduce our first guest with her inspiring story. I want to introduce Miss Trenisha Webster. She's going to talk about her business, how she started it in 2016, T. Marie Innovations, and she helps with business development and credit counseling. Good morning, Trenisha. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm excited to have you here. One of the things that interests me about you in your bio is that you were determined. You said, I'm going to start my business. I don't care what anyone says. Why was it so important for you to be a business owner?
At that time, when I first started opening the business, it was more like unemployment. And I
Mhm.
got tired of living from unemployment check to unemployment check. And I also had one child at the time. So, right then, we were struggling in order to make ends meet. I had to move out quickly within a matter of 24 hours to find a new place. I had to put down a deposit, didn't have much to do so, but they let me in anyways. And I'm fed up with it. So I'm like, I need something to fall back on if anything were to happen again. And that's when I decided to use my skills, my education, and my experience in order to open up my own line of business so I'm able to cater to the community here.
Now, when you focus on credit counseling, but when you were going through your journey, your struggle, was credit a major issue for you?
I wasn't thinking about credit at that
Mhm.
time. It was more like I'm trying to help other inspired entrepreneurs open up their line of business too, create business plans, marketing, branding, anything like that. I have a history that involves credit because I used to work for FICO back in 2007. So I just added that on there. So it's like every year I rebrand and come out with a new product that I have skills and capable of doing.
Mhm. What are some things that people need to know about their credit?
People need to know that you need to learn how to pay everything on time, because if you don't and it shows up, you're looking at a decrease in your score. Don't worry about applying for credit cards left and right. Too many, that's too many inquiries, that's a decrease in the score. Maintain low credit utilization, under 30%. Just because you have a credit limit of 600 does not mean you need to use all 600. You're putting yourself in a dangerous position. And what I mean like that is you're too busy putting on too much for your credit. You're going to see a decrease. Part of our community as minorities, we fail to take care of our credit, and we always mess it up in our early 20s, late 20s, and then we struggle trying to increase our credit scores in order to get a home, in order to get a car, a line of credit. So we need to learn at an early age how to maintain our credit and to maintain it at a good level above 700.
Mhm. I think we definitely need that information, but I am one of those people who believe that we need to do more to prevent the credit card companies to go to like college campuses. I know there was a
Yes.
big movement about that a few years ago because most of these kids straight out of high school, they have no idea about finances. They have no idea about economics. So they go their first week of college and there's this booth that says, "Hey, you need $5,000 to help you get through college." And they're like, of course. And there's no idea in these little, kids' minds that at some point they have to pay this money back. So I believe, I'm like, no, I don't think they should be on college campuses at all. I'm not saying that 18-year-old, 19-year-old shouldn't be able to apply for credit, but let them go out and look for it as opposed to showing up on their front door. I know that was a little tangent on my soapbox right there, but Trinisha, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. That's their primary target, is the ones going into college, because just like you said, they're not thinking about that they have to pay that debt back. And credit card companies want to use that type of mind frame in order for them to fall into the debt, but not only fall into the debt, but it's more like you're going to continue to owe interest. And if you're late, you're going to have to continue to pay those late fees. A high percentage of college students, if they don't learn that at an early age, they're going to fall into that statistic. Mm-hmm. So I agree. They need to stop going on campus. And they also have like the mailings going out, which is very stressful to a lot of people, especially if they're in need of finances. They're quick to go towards that pre-approval. Let me go ahead and sign up. Let me see if I can get this. Another thing is like department stores. Mm-hmm. If you sign up for this credit card, you get 10% off, 30% off of your order. Well, again, not thinking about later on that's going to hurt you consequently, but that's another thing that's on their credit that they got to later on pay for it. It's more like you got to stop and think about what you're doing before you do that. I know quite a few people that have like 20 or more credit cards on their file, and they're in $10,000 debt, $20,000 debt, and they're trying to get up out of that. It's because you consistently hear those offers or those pre-approvals, and you're so quick to apply.
Yes, we are quick to apply because they always sound so good. They always sound so attractive. They're like, oh my God, I got free money in the mail and I'm pre-approved, which means they already know who I am. They've, they have an idea and they're giving me this. So we have to be very careful. But we're talking about, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds who are just starting out. And then we get to be later in our life, 40s, 50s, and we're like, okay, man, I messed up. Because of what I've done 20 years ago, now I can't get that house, or now I have this 400 credit score and there's no way they'll approve me for anything. What do I do? That was a question.
From there, like I have numerous clients coming to me to be part of my credit program. And that's normally the thing. Like I have so many credit cards on my file, so many inquiries. I have collections and late payments. I don't know what to do. I need some type of breathing room. Well, I come in, and part of mine is to actually do extensive research to determine, is that collection agency legal to try to collect those funds from you? Because not a lot of collection agencies have licenses in different states in order to try to acquire about that collection. Or if the inquiries, if they're more than 2 years old, let's go ahead and get them off. They're supposed to fall off anyways, but some just choose to stay attached. And with me, I like to work hands-on with my clients, so then they know that they're not just talking to a robot or a third party who doesn't know too much. I take that very serious. So I want to help my clients and get those discrepancies removed, get as much removed as possible, so then they can see a boost in their credit score and then get their dream home or get their dream car. That's my ulterior motive right there.
I like that motive to help people out. Now, you mentioned 2 years. It was my understanding that most things fell off after 7 years.
That's collections. Inquiries are 2 years. Yep.
Okay, inquiries. Okay, that's wonderful. Now, Trinicia, I want to come back to you, but I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest so we can start the conversation. And I want to introduce Ms. Mary Potter Kenyon. She watches the show, but she also has a way of helping people of her own. She is an author, and she's going to talk to us about Called to Be Creative, a guide to reigniting your creativity. Good morning, Mary. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
I'm excited to speak with you. Now, I love the word reignite, right? To me, it implies that there was some passion. There was something that was lit and that fire has gone out. When do typically people find that their fire has gone out?
Grade 3. Sadly, for a lot of us, it's when we are children. And in order to write this book, I did a lot of research. And I mean, I already knew there was something inside of me that made me want to write. For all those years, I was raising 8 children and homeschooling. I knew that I have 8 kids, and I homeschool, and I still clung to writing. I'd get up at 5 a.m. and write. I would pull over to the curb when a child fell asleep in the back seat and start writing. And so I clung to that. So I knew that was in me, and that I could wake up on a Saturday morning and start writing at 8 o'clock. And at 2 o'clock, a child would be saying, are we going to eat lunch today? And I'd look up at the clock and realize not only did I forget to make lunch for my kids, but I'm still in my pajamas. Mm-hmm. So I knew there was something about getting lost in something that you loved. And so I read probably 40 books doing research for this book. I interviewed people, people who had studied creativity. Wired to Create was one of the books that really hit home for me, because they looked at all the studies of neuroscience and psychology and the practice of creatives, which we all are really, and saw that science supports that we're all wired to create. So I knew that God built us to create. So I had that belief system and that faith in that. But to have science behind it, that really excited me. So my own journey kind of started after my mother died 10 years ago on my birthday. And I was 51 years old. And she was an artist. I mean, I grew up in poverty, but our very simple home was decorated with beautiful braided rag rugs, with paintings on barn boards, she would take burlap sacks and buttons and embroider beautiful pictures. I mean, so yeah, the linoleum might have been torn up and the chairs might have been beaten up, but around us was beauty because of the mother that I grew up with. She found ways to bring beauty and eventually made a home business of it. And wood carving. She was the kind of woman who at age 42 would just sit down and think, oh, I'm going to carve a piece of wood with this kitchen knife. I mean, how many of us think that way? So I think having grown up in a home like that, nobody told me I couldn't write or I couldn't do things. So I just was determined to hang on to that. But after she died and I found unpublished manuscripts amongst her things, I mean, she didn't have much in the way of material things, but what me and my siblings wanted was those leftover wood carvings or the paintings off the wall, the things that she had made with her own hands. And in her empty house, I found a pencil. After we cleaned up the house and we were ready to turn over the keys to a realtor, my daughters were trailing behind me as I cleaned, and the whole house was empty. But as I was dusting the windowsill in her workroom where she had done all that painting and drawing, I found this little thin pencil. It was an advertising pencil. And I said to my three girls standing there, oh, look, I found one of Grandma's magic pencils. And this is what she used to draw with. And this is what she used before she painted. And they're rolling their eyes, Mom, a magic pencil, come on. I go home that day and I'm thinking about the writing I'd been doing kind of as a hobby up until that point. And I was thinking about how I loved art in high school and how I would draw, but I hadn't drawn in 40 years. So I thought, is that still in me? Is that, can I still draw? So I took this magic pencil and a piece of paper, and just thinking about that, I started drawing a tree because I used to love to draw trees. And I hear a gasp in the kitchen doorway. And my daughter, Katie's standing there, and she's 10 or 11 years old. You don't know how to draw? That really is a magic pencil. Can I try it? So it's just like, and I thought, there's something to this. There's something that what we loved as children is still in us. And what happens to that and where does it go? And had I drawn for the last 40 years, I could have been an artist maybe just as easily as I could have been a writer. So I sat down and showed my children who had not seen pictures that I had drawn in high school, and just like boggled their minds. So that was a good lesson for me and for my children. And that kind of got me on the road of, do we have this creative bent in us? And I started doing some workshops. And I had a husband at the time who was very encouraging, and he'd never seen me talk in public, and I'd never even imagined talking in public. But I was so passionate about this idea of, I've been hanging on to this creativity by writing, but there's all these young moms who have kind of not been doing that. And there's older people who maybe have lost this idea that there's something in them. So the first group I spoke to was a group of young homeschooling moms. And I asked them, do you believe your children have creativity in them? And there's something that they were born with that you can encourage with classes and paying for your, lessons. And they're nodding their heads and yes, yes, yes. And then I said, what about you? And all of a sudden they couldn't meet my eyes. They were just looking away. It's like, well, I don't have time. Well, I'm busy being a mom, and stuff. And that broke my heart. And then I spoke to a group of women at the other end of the spectrum in their 80s, 70s and 80s. And I'm asking them the same question. Do you believe each of your children has some inherent talent and you encourage them? Well, of course they did. Just as my mother believed each of her 10 children had some inherent talent. But what about you? I asked. Oh, well, it's too late for me, was the answer. Or, well, I don't have any talent. They believed that. So I thought, okay, there's got to be a book in this. And that was almost 10 years ago. And I just wrote down a few notes about what I was seeing, what I was learning. And it took another few years and a few more books in between before I sat down again to write that book and do a little more research. And it happened that I started writing during a time when my husband had passed away in 2012. So he passed away 17 months after my mom did. And I was losing a grandson to cancer. So there was a lot of loss and grief going on. And all of a sudden, the stay-at-home mom who could barely string 2 words together to talk to the butcher or the baker was all of a sudden having to find work. And I had a college degree, but it was how many years before that? I'd been writing. So I started doing these workshops, and I started thinking, well, here's this book sitting here in my brain, and I got to bring it up. And then I got a job working at a newspaper, which should have been the ideal job for me, right? I'd been writing at home, getting up real early in the morning and pulling over to the curb to write. And here I was going to be paid to write, to sit down at a desk. It about killed me. Because all of a sudden I had to cover legislative coffees and school board meetings. And it was just writing stories about corn and beef, the beef queen, and just, small town Iowa. That's what my stories were. Yes, there was some wonderful human interest stories, which I loved. So that's when I decided to give up the health insurance for a while and give up those hours, and because I wasn't writing for myself anymore. And I started working for a library. Well, eventually all those jobs and all those experiences and the writing the books, and I became a certified grief counselor in 2017. We're getting close to 60 years of age here, and I'm reinventing my entire self. All of those experiences, the losing the 3 important people, the writing of books, the learning how to be edited, and all of this led me to the job that I do now as a program coordinator at a spirituality center. And so not only am I doing programs, but I'm hiring other people to do programs. I can talk about God and faith all day long. I love that. And so at the age of 60, I am now running grief retreats. I am living my dream and my passions, and it's been an amazing journey.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us on this journey and allowing the Roundtable Talk Show and myself to be a part of your journey. Are you in Iowa?
Yes, I'm in Iowa.
Is this like the Iowa show? I don't know. Like I always see, like I said, a theme. Like what happened? Like Iowa wanted a voice today, Trenisha?
Yeah, right.
We have Trenisha in Des Moines, and you're Mary. Where are you?
In Dubuque.
Okay. Well, this is going to be great. Your story is inspiring. You took me in so many different turns that I was like, just when I thought you had found a conclusion, like, okay, now I'm going to be a author and that's it. You're like, no, now let me go write and draw. And I'm like, okay, now she's an author and she draws. And it's like, no, I work with grief counseling. Okay, now you know what I mean? And then you add on to the spiritual aspect, which we definitely want to discuss. But I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest, Mr. John J. Ricci, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about his journey. And I just watched him smile when he heard your story, Mary, because he's talking about how he helps people find the Lord. Good morning, Jay. How are you?
Thank you so much. Another day, another blessing. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, excuse me. My story is similar to Mary's in that I had to go through a lot of pain early on. I was raised by parents that were in the middle of a divorce. They also battled drug abuse, they battled homelessness, and it wasn't a good environment for me and my sister. So at the age of 6, my dad's sister, my biological aunt, she saw the situation, and she did not want me and my sister to end up in a strange home, placed there by the state, and so she had no kids of her own, and she didn't have a husband. She didn't have a lot of money. She also battled health challenges, but she was determined, I'm gonna rescue these kids, because I mean, even though my sister, she's my half sister, she has a different dad, she has the same mom, but my aunt was blood with me because she's a sister to my dad, and so she's like, Jay's blood and Tracy is his sister. I'm not gonna abandon them. I'm gonna take them in. I'll find a way to raise them. So she adopted me, into her family. And I say that in quotes because it really wasn't like a regular adoption. We were adopted by a strange family, or a new family, I should say. So she took me in, and she poured love into us and gave us a foundation that would help us to become who we are today. So that was in when I was 6, and so 3 years later, my biological dad was murdered on the streets of Boston, and to this day, we do not know who did it, and that didn't really affect me that much, because like my dad wasn't really around me anyways. Like he probably popped into my aunt's house where we were staying, and I probably seen him like once, and that's it. Like, and then last thing I heard was that he got murdered. So it didn't affect me because I didn't really have a relationship with him, and so we just lived with my aunt, and she was, we were raised in a religious home. But we didn't really know God, we didn't have a personal relationship with him, and so we had 2 evangelists come to my neighborhood, knock on the door, and inviting us to a program called Neighborhood Bible Time, where they would, it was like a whole week of activities for kids my age, free snacks, a program from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the afternoon, and we learned about the Lord Jesus, on our level, and it was hosted at a Baptist church. And my aunt's like, well, we're Catholic, telling the evangelist, I don't know if this is a good thing, because we have our own religion. And they assured us, which it's, you don't have to, join our church. It's just hosted by the church. You can come any day you want and, observe. And I was pulling on her blouse saying, let me go, and everybody else was going. So she gave in, she cried uncle, so to speak, and she let us go. And every day I heard the gospel. Every day I heard about the love of God. Every day I heard that God loves us, he created us, but each of us are born into a world where we're separated from that relationship with God. And he has overturned every stone to pursue us, because he wants us to have a relationship with him, because of the benefit to us that it will be. So Thursday was the day I responded to the invitation, because every day they had an invitation, and then Friday would be the last day of the program, and the awards would be given for how many people you brought and how many Bible verses you did, and if you actually had an act of kindness that someone observed, you get a reward for that, whatever. So Thursday I was ready. was like, this makes sense. I'm not a mass murderer. I'm not a terrible person, but I know I've disobeyed God because I've disobeyed my aunt. And from this point on, I started calling my aunt Mom because I really didn't know my biological mom either. So I knew I wanted to, get right with God. And so at the age of 8, I knew enough in my heart that this is for me. This message of reconciliation and relationship is what I need. And so that was the day I was born again. I began my relationship with Christ, or with God through Christ. And then I came home and God just began to do a work in me, gave me a hunger for him. I was like, Mom, I want to go back there. That can we go to church there? And we're still Catholic, in as far as our identity. But I was like, I knew I was born again. I knew I was like, I want to, learn more about Christ. What does he want for my life? Like, I want to know him, and she was smoking at the time. And I used to tell her, Jesus wants me to pray for you because that's not good for your health, Mommy, and she'd go outside and smoke. And she'd come in, and it wasn't good enough because he still smelled like smoke. And I said, Mom, you still smell like smoke. I'm gonna pray that you understand God made you for better, and not to destroy your health. And so we befriended the assistant pastor and his son. And a couple of weeks after the program ended, they just became our friends and knitted their life with ours and kind of visited us every once in a while. They knew we were still going to the Catholic Church, but they were interested in us as people. And I liked the assistant pastor's son, and I really I admired him because he is the type of father that I would look up to if my dad was here. And basically, they kind of encouraged her, look at your status with God. How is it going? And she ended up committing herself to Christ. She had a knowledge of Christ. She had the facts, but no relationship. And she committed herself to a relationship with Christ. And the Holy Spirit came into her life and gave her the power to give up that smoking. And she eventually took us to the Baptist church where we were connected with the people already, and we started growing in our hunger for God and love for others. And then I became a teenager, entered high school, didn't go to a Christian school. I went to a public school. And at the age of 13, my biological mother died of AIDS and pneumonia.
Oh, wow.
And I found out about that through my grandmother, and that affected me, not because I had a relationship with my mom, Gloria, what was her name, but because her death reminded me that my dad isn't here either.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
I started
on your own. You were
Yes.
on your own. So it seems like you had a lot of loss between your parents, losing your dad, losing your mom. And before you physically lost them, you lost them as a child and had to go live with an aunt. So you didn't have a very strong family unit initially, but you had someone who, through the grace of God, stepped in to mentor you, to help you. And sometimes it's just enough just to be there for you, even if you don't get the mentorship and the guidance. So what are you doing now? I know. Okay, what are you doing now?
So, well, now I'm an evangelist. I am a part-time staff missionary with a mission company or mission organization here in the Boston area. Mm-hmm. And I wrote a book on evangelism to try to give Christians a deeper and a fresh way to look at what exactly is evangelism and what does it do for the believer and also for the non-believer. Because I think that we have a shallow understanding of what evangelism is in the Christian world, and I haven't arrived. And I'm not saying that my book is the best, and other books will be written on the subject. But my book, my approach is more of it's not an academic, like how do you do this A, B, C, D, because I don't think that there's one size fits all as far as how you engage with someone. And the context of how you're engaging with them, where in the world you're engaging with them. And in my book, hopefully, which is right here, by the way, it's called Evangelism's Flip Side, A Journey of Reaping the Unexpected. And it's a pathway to the nations. Because my book is, I think Mary mentioned about a journey she's on. My book is about a journey as well. And it's a journey of, I wouldn't say self-discovery, but I would say it's a journey of where, your foundation begins with Christ, and then where he takes you from there, because everybody has a foundation.
Everybody has a foundation. Definitely.
You're building on sand, as Jesus said, or you're building on rock, which is him. And from those foundations, a person will build, whether it's life and creativity, like was mentioned, or business. It
will definitely build.
Exactly.
It starts from the foundation. So I want to come back to you, Jay, but I want to ask Trinicia a question, because when we listen to Jay speak, when we listen to Mary speak, I always find that people have some type of faith that kind of allows them to do what they do. Was faith a part of you stepping out and starting your business?
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
Reason being is because I don't follow religion.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself a believer. So yeah, I do believe in Jesus Christ, and my faith in him to guide me where I want to be and how I want to do it is what led me to open up my business.
Mm-hmm. Was it, did you find that there were people who were surprised or were naysayers when you started that journey?
Yeah. Yes. There was, my best friend at the time was very surprised that I wanted to take the entrepreneurship, because when we were growing up, that's just something that I didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to go ahead and just, work for the man and continue to work for the man and just climb up the corporate ladder. But now looking into it, I also want my kids to know that there's more to life, and instead of just having a job. Go out there and explore, use your skills, go into entrepreneurship, build generational wealth. That's my main focus.
What are some ways that people can build generational wealth?
Life insurance is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you hear from other races that they will end up getting life insurance and they want their kids as beneficiaries. And then, of course, when they pass on, their kids get 6 figures, 7 figures. So that's one way. When they're young as babies, opening up a savings account, start throwing money in the savings account. So by the time they hit 18, 21, or 25, they have a lump sum of money that they're able to use either to pursue education or to invest in entrepreneurship. So I'm working with both ways.
Mm-hmm. Mary, Trinicia talked about generational wealth and having something to pass on to your family. Jay talked about his upbringing and his religious beliefs. For you, did you find that it was difficult to start a business as a mom? Like, you have 8 kids. I know you talked about how the creativity came about. You sat down on the side of the road, kids asleep, you had to write. It was something that is, you're very passionate about. But was it easy for you to do emotionally, mentally?
Oh my gosh, no. There was no easy about it. I don't know where the determination came from. But I was determined. And my husband for many, many years called it my little hobby. I mean, he didn't understand it or see why his wife would get up at 5 a.m. to sit there and write. And he would even say, after hours of me writing, "Are you working on one of your little stories?" Well, using the word little is making it
minimizes
a small thing. And besides, it wasn't stories. It was all nonfiction. I was writing what I knew I was writing. I was getting in anthologies. I think of a check coming in the mail helped.
Mm-hmm.
Chicken Soup for the Soul pays $200. So when that $200 check came, I think he started paying attention to this. And after he went through cancer and I was his caregiver for several years, or months, I'm sorry, our whole relationship changed and he became my biggest supporter. So for the last 5.5 years of his life, he was the one cheering me on. He was the one saying, hey, don't you want to go out for breakfast and write a little bit, and especially if I got grouchy. If you're not doing what you're meant to do, you get a little grouchy. And so he'd say, isn't it time for you to go write? That's a nice way of saying, hey, you're grouchy. So he became my biggest supporter, and I didn't know how I would ever do what I was doing, because by then I was doing some workshops. I was getting out there. I was working on a book. I didn't know if I would ever see that book get published and stuff. And I didn't know how I was going to do it without him when he died, but because of his belief in me and because of the encouragement, and he had believed in me, I was determined again to make it happen. I signed 6 book contracts in the 8 years since my husband died. I mean, to me, that's amazing. 6
To
book
me, that's
contracts.
amazing.
So
that is amazing.
Yes, and
congratulations.
So it's just, but when I see young moms or young women, they come to my writers classes and they say, well, I can't do this right now. I'll do it later when the kids are older. I actually printed out a picture of me with a baby on a backpack, sitting at a typewriter. And I said, this is the glamorous life that I lived for almost 27 years or 30 years before I saw a lot of success with my writing. There's a baby on my back. I wasn't going to wait. If I had waited till my kids had left home before I started writing, I would still be waiting, because I live with my 17-year-old daughter. She is not gone yet, so don't wait to follow your dreams. It's a big lesson there. But I don't want to discourage these young moms either, because it's not easy to follow your dreams. It's not, you've got to be determined. I don't know if I'm just stubborn and determined, but I just had my eye on what I wanted in my life, and it has changed a little bit as I've gotten older and lost these important people in my life. But you
have to be stubborn.
Yeah.
The stubbornness is what gives you that stick-to-itiveness. It's that drive. That's one of the things I talk about with entrepreneurs. One of the common themes that I see is that it is a calling. It's something that they have to do. And you'll see that most of them have started, stopped, started, stopped, started, stopped so many times. And they really wish, like, there are so many times that I really wish that I could have walked away, that I could have gone and gotten a job and just lived this quote unquote normal life. But it's something that I have to do, couldn't stop if I wanted to. Has that been your experience, Jay?
Yeah, and it's really interesting, because the things that were poured into my life when I was younger set the foundation for me. I mean, my book is a result of my mom. She passed away of cancer in 2018, and my book, the contents of my book, was on my computer. It had been just divine encounters, awesome personal witnessing stories from people I met all over the place, airports and outside the country, just packed in all those stories, and I put them on my computer and I left them there, because I had no inspiration, no motivation to get published. And when she died, when she left so unexpectedly, I thought back of all that she poured into me, and just, I gave her, hell on earth too, because I wasn't the easiest child to raise. I even wrote a poem for her that I read at her as part of a celebration of life, a eulogy, just kind of saying that I didn't really understand what it takes for a single mom to raise a boy into a man. And that's one of the lines of the poem, by the way. And so the book was a way for me to say, you know what? It's not going to bless anybody staying on my computer. This creativity that has come from the Lord through me, it's not going to give God glory. It's not going to encourage and build up other people if it stays there. So I felt, the Holy Spirit say, honor your mom, get it published. Put her name on the first page, dedicate it to her. Because what love, what compassion, what generosity, when you pour that into a child, when you pour that into anybody, you can pour it into adult, it unleashes freedom in that person, where the floodgates of creativity can come in, or entrepreneurial spirit can come in. And I also design T-shirts with creative messages on. My store is called Inspired Creations with no I, just Inspired Creations.
I like
And
that. Inspired creations. I think the theme today is just creativity, using the spirit that's in us to create, because we are all born creators. Now, something that Jay said, I want to go over to Mary real quick. You spoke about single moms and being creative and their children being inspired, but what are they doing for themselves? But I want to ask you the reverse question. What has happened with your children as a result of them seeing you become the best mom and the best person that you could be? Have any of them become entrepreneurs, authors? Have they chosen the same route as you?
I think it's partly our homeschooling lifestyle and partly, I hope, watching their grandmother and their mom do creative things. And they grew up with a mom who was always at the typewriter. I mean, it was typewriter then, and then computer, and then paper. And so I don't think they saw, just like I didn't see my mom as being different than other moms until you're older. And then you think, hey, wait a minute, not every mom carves wood and paints on barn boards. And I even remember a 16-year-old daughter who came across one of my binders of my published writing, and she's 16 years old. And she said, I didn't know you wrote. I said, what did you think I was doing all this time? So it's just part of their life. And I do have a son who purchased my mother's house, the house that I found the magic pencil in, and he actually learned through YouTube how to blow glass. I mean, who would even think of that? So he's using her workroom to blow glass, and he makes, things on blowing glass. I mean, to me, that's terrifying. Just chuck it in. That's, it's just terrifying. Another son who makes a living off things he sells on the internet that he makes on the internet. I mean, so my children are all creative in their own way. They don't always see it. I've got an artist daughter who sells on Etsy. She's got beautiful talent from her, I'm sure from her grandmother, not from me. And so of my 8 children, I would say they are all creative in their own way. I hope they always see that, they think outside of the box.
I think that's beautiful. Beautiful. Trinicia, earlier you mentioned your best friend and her being surprised. Have you inspired, and one of the things that you do is business development. Have you inspired the people around you, your network, your social group, to be entrepreneurs and to develop their own businesses?
I have, just based off of what I've done. And then, of course, when you see someone who wants to be motivated and be determined in order to start their business, but it's like they think it takes a whole lot of money in order to do so. Mm-hmm. But in reality, it doesn't. Mm-hmm. Here in Iowa, you're able to register your business and get an EIN and everything under $100 to do so. Mm-hmm. Business cards, I mean, you can get those for cheap too. So if you think with the mindset that it's going to cost so much in order to open up a line of business and continue it on, then it's like you're not really motivated, in my eyes, in order to start it. You're making up excuses as to why you shouldn't, mm-hmm. when you should have the mindset and the motivation to, this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I want to turn my hobby into something that I can make money with for years, mm-hmm. and just bring people on in order to have them become inspired too.
So often though, I mean, it's one of those things that we understand, we get from an intellectual, logical point of view from that perspective, but so often there's something in us that keeps us stuck, that we don't want to take that step to be an entrepreneur. We don't want to take that step to be a business owner because it may take less than $100 to start the business, to get started. I always tell people you can get a domain and website hosting for less than $20, and start working your business. But people feel like, okay, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I can do it. How can I be successful? Or the number one excuse that I hear is, oh, but there are already so many authors out there. Oh, but there are already so many credit counselors out there. There's so many, this and so many of that. So people don't want to take that step. Jay, that might have been your experience. There are millions, if not trillions, of evangelists, people going out trying to bring people to God. You could have looked at it and said, you know what? There's already enough. Why didn't you?
Because God didn't let me.
Good answer. Good answer. He's like, get to work.
yeah, I just wave the white flag. I say I'll stop fighting with the one who knows me better than myself, and the one who can empower me in ways I can't even imagine. I just surrender and let him. So I did, and it's and I'm exploring the possibility of writing more books, not on evangelistic theme, but more of like a devotional theme, and also, potentially may pursue a pastorate in the near future, because I really want to help people grow the way Jesus grew, because most people don't understand the early life of Christ. They just skip to the his death and resurrection, and okay, the church is here, but we forget that Jesus himself grew. He was, I believe he was fully God, but also fully a human being as well, and we can't relate to God because that's outside of our capacity, but we can relate to the man Christ Jesus, and he grew in 4 ways that is overlooked today. We have emphasized the spiritual, but he grew. Scripture says he grew in wisdom. That's academic. That's being streets wise. Readers are leaders. I love books, as you can see behind me. I think we need to be expanding our creative powers by reading other people, even if it's in different disciplines, like reading science books or health books or business books. Even if you have no plan to be an entrepreneur or whatever, it expands your way of thinking. And so he grew in wisdom and in stature. He grew physically. He was a man's man. He worked with his hands. He was healthy. He knew when to take breaks, rest. He grew in favor with God. That's spiritually. We know that part. But he also grew in favor with people. He grew socially. And I think that if we can grow socially, grow spiritually, grow physically, and grow academically, I believe that will help people to not see lack in the world, see abundance. Because when people see abundance, they're like, whoa, let me go at it. If they focus on lack, that's what gets people stuck.
That's right. We have to focus on abundance. Now, Jay was talking, Mary, and I'm just watching you shaking your head and smiling and agreeing. What are your thoughts on what Jay had to say?
Well, I pretty much agree with him. I will say one thing is when he said a personal relationship with God 10 years ago, I would not have understood what he meant. I mean, because I would hear people say, I heard God, or God told me, and I was like, well, why is he not talking to me, and stuff. So, but I have that now, and I developed it through loss, and it took that to get my attention and learn to be still and to listen and stuff. So it was wonderful to hear him say that personal relationship, but I would not have understood what he was talking about even 10 years ago.
That you went through the loss of your husband, the loss of your mother, probably the loss of your grandson. And so through loss, we do learn how to hear that. Now, we are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And what I love to do at the end of every show is just simply allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience and let them know what you want them to take away from your appearance here today. And we want to start with you, Trenisha.
So also just take away from the fact that just be motivated to become something that you never thought you would become. Go into entrepreneurship, build your generational wealth, get into business credit. That's something that you could do too. Buy my book is based on that, building business credit for small businesses. If you need help doing so, contact me. That's www.tmarieinnovations.com. And you're able to go onto my website, see everything that I do and everything that you have questions in regards to as far as business, resume designing, tax prep, business credit. I'm there and I can definitely help you hands-on.
We didn't even mention your book. Can you tell us just a little bit, give us a taste of what they can expect from your book and where to find it?
So much detail on how to build business credit from the start to the finish.
Okay, and where can they find it?
Amazon and on Goodreads, also on my website as well. It takes you right to it.
Okay, have to check it out. Thank you, Trenisha. Jay, what do you have for us?
Yeah, so I would just encourage people out there, wherever you are, see abundance. You may be going through a very hard time right now. You may hit a bump in the road. But I would encourage you, even if you have no interest in, Christian evangelism or anything like that, I want you to consider getting my book, not because I want to sell books, but because I believe that the way that I wrote the book and the way that I'm trying to help people see evangelism is a vehicle for God to build you. If you let God build you, then, not even the sky is the limit. And if you build you, you're gonna see abundance, and you're gonna want to help others to see abundance as well, because that's really what it's all about when it comes to starting a business. I mean, I know Trinicia, she talked about her business, and I'm sure as an entrepreneur, even with Mary's writing, it's about helping serve others. It's about serving others, because in blessing others, you get the blessing. It's more than just money and all these other things. It's really about being sociable in the world and leaving the world better as a result of you being in it than not. So I just want to encourage people. Also, check out my store. It's on spreadshirt.com/inspired creations, all one word. Inspired creations, no I at the beginning. And there's tons of satirical, political, and faith communications on shirts, mugs, and if you got an idea, you can always send me a note and let me know if you think a shirt would be a good idea, and I'll work on it for you.
People typically don't mix religion and politics. I'm just saying. So we have religious and political T-shirts. Like, I want to hear one of these political T-shirts.
One of the shirts that is basically like an image of a person behind a podium speaking, and it says, and the question is, how do you know if a politician is lying? And the answer is their mouth open. I'm just being fresh in a little way, but all good, clean fun, I hope.
I don't know. Since I've entered the political ring, I don't know if I agree with that one. After my run for Long Beach City Council, I see things a little different. So, Jay, thank you. Mary, what do you have for us?
Yes, I want to let the listeners know that it's never too late to find what it is you were created to do, that you were designed to do. I'm living proof of that. Funny that we were talking about finance. My book, Coupon Crazy, Science and Savings of Stories Behind America's Extreme Obsession, because I was one of those crazy coupon ladies who made you wait in line for hours and hours. And that was the book that my husband believed in, that only sold 7 months after he died. How cancer cured a marriage, was taking care of him during cancer. It's really a love story, not a cancer story. Refined by Fire, a journey of grief and grace. That is my personal faith and grief journey of losing mother, husband, and grandson in the space of 3 years. Mary and Me, A Lasting Link Through Ink, a co-written book with Mary Jessica Humston about a 30-year letter writing relationship that blossomed after my husband's death when we saw each other more. Expressive Writing for Healing. I do classes on this and workshops, Journaling Your Way from Grief to Hope. And the one that I'm most excited about that was just released last month is called To Be Creative, a guide to reigniting your creativity. So this has been quite a journey for me. One good thing that has come out of the pandemic is the programs I do had to pivot online. So anybody, anywhere can now join in on some of the programs I do. We have, I work for Shalom Retreats. And so if you go to shalomretreats.org, you can see some of the programs. If you want to combine grief and creativity for a healing, we're going to have a grief retreat in November 14th on a Saturday, utilizing creativity to heal yourself, because we all have it in us to heal ourselves. And you can find me at www.marypotterkenyon.com. And my books are available through Workman Publishing, through Amazon, through Barnes & Noble, any of your independent bookstores, because I think we should all support our independent bookstores.
Wow, Mary, I love it. I think you are magic. I just saw, you know, how the magician takes that rag and he just keeps pulling it out and pulling it out and pulling it out. It's like white and blue and green. That's what I saw with your books. It's like Mary's like, and then I have this book. And then this book is like 30 books later. It's like, I am so impressed. We talked about your story, how your mom, the magic pencil, all these things, but wow, so many books. Mary, everyone definitely feel free to come back because I want to talk a little bit more in depth about what you have going on. But right now, I want to thank you all for being a guest on today's episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. I definitely enjoyed it. I also want to thank everyone who is watching the show. We definitely appreciate your support, but please don't just watch the show. Share the show, support our guests, visit their websites, pick up a couple of books. We have so many authors on the show today, and send them a message. That's what I always ask. Send them a message, an inbox, a text, a tweet, whatever it is that you have to do. But when you send that message, please let them know Sharifa Hardy says hi. And if you're interested in more ways that I can help your business, maybe you want to pick up your tickets to my Power by Purpose 2-day empowerment teleconference, which is October 9th and 10th. Or maybe you're interested in being a guest and sharing your story. Visit the website at asksharifa.com. Until Monday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, everyone have a safe and a blessed weekend. Bye now.